Hey, my friends, it's Wednesday. It's 1 p.m. Pacific, and I'm Mary Rose Wood. I'm here live with you, and I see already we've got some folks watching live. Hey, Terry. Hey, Chris. Hey, the rest of you. I see a head count. It's so nice to see so many of you here live. We talk about writing craft. We talk about story structure. We talk about the mindset of the working, thriving writer. And today, my friends, we're also going to talk about Il Trovatore. So we're really going outside our usual subject matter, but there's a reason that I want to talk about this beloved opera by Giuseppe Verdi, because the plot of this opera is bananas. It makes no sense. I started a couple minutes late today because I was looking at my notes saying, how am I going to explain this? It's inexplicable. And yet we're going to try. I'm going to do it super quick because I have a point to make today. And the point that I want to make is that clarity is a virtue. It's a virtue in many aspects of our lives. It's a virtue when we declutter our closets and we get a little clarity about what we need and we don't need. You know, it's a clarity within ourselves, and we know what we think and what we want, and we are not distracted by indecision. But this is a live stream about writing, my friends, and clarity is such a virtue in our writing. It is such a gift to your reader. If you don't make them do all the work of connecting the dots of your story, it's one of your prime responsibilities as a storyteller to connect the dots so that the reader can enjoy the ride. So that's what we're going to talk about with a little help from my friend Giuseppe Verdi. So I don't know how many of you are opera fans. I'm an opera fan, but I'm not an opera expert. In fact, let me introduce myself just in case you feel like you've accidentally stumbled onto an opera fan channel. You haven't. I'm Mary Rose Wood. I myself am an author. I'm a novelist. I'm best known for my middle grade books, which are books that are written and published as a children's literature, usually for ages 8 to 12, but anybody who loves good kidlit knows that we have a wide age range of readers, including many grown-ups. And I have a program called Path of the Storyteller, which is where I love to mentor and teach and try to demystify some of the things that writers get hung up on. I've been a teacher for a long time, and I see patterns. And these patterns are the kinds of pitfalls and little sticky places that well-intended writers can most easily fall into when they haven't had the training and practice and mentorship to steer them away from, the common mistakes. The overcomplication of plots is definitely one of these. And after having a terrific time seeing a production of this opera this past weekend, I could not resist the chance to use it as a springboard to talk about this topic. I think you're going to find it of benefit. So we're going to talk about a plot that's bananas. We're going to talk about why it's not a great idea for you to follow this as a model in your own work, and why, and what to do instead. Okay. As ever, this is truly a live stream. I'm here, and I'd love to see you guys say hi in the comments. Hey, Nancy. Hey, me. Yeah, we've got lots of folks saying hi. Please, if you have questions about what I'm saying or observations that you want to share, please feel free to post them. If you're watching the live stream in replay, you can also post questions in the comments below, and I will answer, and we can have a conversation that way. All right. Are we ready to burst into song, my friends? I hope so. All right. I think it was the closing weekend of a really fun production of Il Trovatore, which means the troubadour, the singer, an opera about a singer. And by the way, as I said, I'm not an expert on opera, but I am a fan. And I will tell you that if you ask a person who's knowledgeable about opera, but what about the plot of Il Trovatore? They'll go, oh, it's bananas. This is a known thing. This isn't just, a kind of a personal insight by an amateur. So let me summarize it for you. I'll try to be quick, and I'll try to be entertaining. So we're in medieval Spain. All right. This was a mid-19th century Italian opera by Verdi, but it's set in medieval Spain. And one of the principal characters is the daughter of a woman who's one of the Romani people, culturally long known as gypsies, but now more respectfully called by the rightful name of the Roma people. So there's a character of a Roma woman who is unfairly accused of putting a curse on the baby of a nobleman. Who knows why they did this? I think she was nearby and the baby got sick. They assumed she must have put a curse on the baby. And so what do? They decide to burn this woman at the stake. Not a very uplifting beginning to an opera, but this plot thickens so fast. You just really try to stay with me. So the Roma woman is being burned at the stake and she has a daughter. And the daughter right away feels that it's her responsibility to revenge this terrible end that her mother's being put to. And what does she decide to do but kidnap the nobleman's baby and throw it in the fire? All right, it's vengeance. It's an opera. Things are going to be super heightened. There we go. So she kidnaps the nobleman's baby. Her mother's being burned at the stake, and she decides she's going to throw the baby in the fire out of revenge. There's only one problem. She gets confused, and I'm sorry, this is so sad and unpleasant. It's only going to get worse, I warn you. In her confusion, she throws the wrong baby in the fire. So we are in high melodrama. The tragedy is the baby she throws in the fire by accident is her own baby. She figures out her mistake right away, and it's a catastrophe, but nobody else knows that this has happened. What does she do? She raises the kidnapped baby as her own. So far, I hope this is clear, because here's the problem. All of this happens. Yes, I'm getting a my goodness in the comments. Oh, literally, my goodness. And just wait. Here's the problem. All of this happens like a generation before the opera begins. This is all backstory. So guess what? The audience does not know it. They don't really know much of this. There's a kind of a aria near the beginning where somebody says, hey, tell us the story of the woman who, was burned at the stake, but he doesn't actually know what happened. So he tells an incomplete version of the story. I digress. Fast forward a generation. The Roma woman who did the terrible deed of throwing her own baby in the fire by accident has raised the kidnapped nobleman's baby as her own. He's now a grown man, and he's a singer. He's the troubadour of the title, Il Trovatore. And just so you know, his mother, this character, she sort of disappears for a little while, but she's the mezzo-soprano. She's one of the stars of the opera. The audience knows this. They may not know all of what just happened, what I just told you, but they know she's one of the stars. She'll definitely be back, but she goes off stage for a bit. Now we're a generation later. The wrong baby is a grown man. He's a singer, and he's in love with a woman who is, of course, a soprano, because this is an opera. He's the tenor. She's the soprano. Now, opera fans know this. When a tenor falls in love with a soprano in an opera, someplace there is a baritone who's going to try to get in the way. That's just the way operas go. So the baritone is a nobleman. He's in love with the soprano also. And she has no interest in him, but she's in love with the troubadour. So the baritone finds out about the tenor because guess what? It's dark. It's nighttime. The soprano leaves her room to go, pitch woo with the tenor. But in the dark, she pitches woo with the wrong guy. She pitches woo with the baritone. Oh no, it's like another mistaken identity situation right away. So she mistakes the baritone for the tenor in the dark, and a duel ensues. There's sword fighting. The troubadour is wounded, and we think he's dead. The soprano thinks he's dead. Guess what? He's not dead. His mother, remember, the mezzo-soprano, she's not really his mother. She's the woman that tried to throw him in the fire when he was a baby. She kind of nurses him back to health. And in the process of doing this, she kind of accidentally tells him the story of throwing the babies in the fire and switching them, and that it was the wrong one. And he says, wait a minute, I'm not your real son. You're not my real mother. And she's like, yeah, I didn't really say that. Okay, so we'll just move on. We'll just skip that. We've all been to family gatherings like that where the truth bomb is dropped and everyone just says, pass the gravy. That's kind of what happens. But remember the soprano that he's in love with. She thinks he's dead. So what does she do? What would any of us do? She tries to join a convent, right? I mean, it's the next logical thing to do. So she tries to join a convent, and they're in the middle of signing her into the convent, but the tenor finds out, And he swoops in and he interrupts this at the last minute, like just in the nick of time. He prevents her from joining the convent, and they run off. I mean, there's some fighting and stuff, but they run off, and there's like a moment of happiness, and you have to really cherish it because there aren't so many in this opera. Now, there are random battle scenes sprinkled in here because, as it turns out, there's a war going on between the nobleman who serves a prince and there's another prince that we don't even get to meet, but he has his own nobleman and they're fighting. And so every now and then there's a battle scene, but somehow our nobleman is on one side and the tenor, who I thought was just a singer, is also a soldier maybe, and he's on the other side. It makes no sense. Random battle scenes, sword fighting, okay? At one point during the fighting, the mezzo-soprano, the mother, is wandering for no good reason that I can discern around the battlefield. And somebody says, hey, I recognize her from a million years ago. Wasn't that the woman who threw the baby in the fire? And they capture her. And now she's a prisoner or something, a hostage. And just remember, in the opera, everybody thinks she threw the nobleman's baby in the fire. So that was the nobleman who would be the father of the current baritone. I know you're probably taking notes. It's okay. You don't really have to follow it. So here's the thing. The mezzo-soprano is now being held hostage. The tenor, who's finally having a moment of happiness with the soprano, finds out about it. He's like, I'm not even sure she's my real mother, but she's been good to me. She saved my life. I better go rescue her because guess what? Now they want to burn her at the stake. He goes to try to rescue the woman who's not his real mother. He's not sure. He gets captured. Now they're both captured. And the soprano, heaven help us, is the only person left to try to save the day. And what does she do? What would any of us do? She drinks poison. She thinks this is going to help. I'm not sure why, but she goes and she tells the baritone, oh, I'll be yours. Just let them go free. And the baritone is like, maybe, okay. And then she drinks poison. It's just very poor timing. I just don't think she thought it through, if you're following this at all. So she drinks poison. Does she die? No, my friends. This is an opera. She sings and she sings. There's just a lot of singing that happens. Eventually, she gets a little woozy. You can sort of see that she's getting a little woozy. She even has a fight with the tenor. They have a lover's quarrel before he even realizes that she's poisoned. But eventually, she does die of the poison. The baritone realizes that he's been tricked. The tenor's standing right there. He kills the tenor. So now the tenor's dead. The soprano's dead. The baritone thinks that he's killed his rival, but the mezzo-soprano is standing there all along. You know what she said? She's like, ha, fooled you. The tenor you just killed, he was your brother. My vengeance is complete. Curtain. That, my friends, is the plot of Il Trovatore. Now, when I say that this plot is bananas, I hope you understand now what I'm talking about. It is impossible to follow. Even if you know it, it doesn't make any sense. I didn't even mention the Anvil Chorus, which is one of the most famous pieces of classical music. And you all know it. It's just randomly shoved in there that there's just a chorus of people banging on anvils and singing about, wine, women, and song. Why not? It's very catchy. Why am I telling you all this? Because, honestly, the truth is that this opera is incredibly popular. It was a huge hit, even from its premiere. It was a smash. The audience went wild. I think they made them do the ending again. Now, this is, considered evidence that they loved it, but it's also possible they just needed to see it one more time to figure out what happened. I don't know if anyone's ever considered that as a possibility. But the opera is done to this very day. I just saw a great production this weekend. It's gonna be done. It's just gonna continue to be done. Are we to take that as a lesson that an incomprehensible plot is an asset to a narrative? Is that my message today? Well, I think you know that it's not. I'm going to bring in a quote from the famous, often considered one of the greatest tenors of all kind, the famous Italian tenor Enrico Caruso. And what Caruso said about Il Trovatore, I think, is illuminating. He said it's very easy to put on a production of Il Trovatore. All you need to do is to cast the 4 greatest singers in the world, and you're all set. Caruso was really onto something, wasn't he? Because the audience was not coming to Il Trovatore for the plot. They were coming for the mezzo-soprano, the soprano, the tenor, and the baritone. That's what they're coming for. And this opera delivers on the scale of what the audience wanted, which was not just emotion, and not just a big emotion, but enormous emotion, right? When you start with a woman being burned at the stake and babies being thrown into a fire, and there's war, and there's a love story, and there's drinking poison, and I'm running off into a convent. Literally every scene is climactic. Every scene is just pushing the emotional stakes as high as they can go. And it sort of doesn't matter what came before and what came after, because what's happening in each scene is just so over the top. It's so over the top that the emotion is huge, and therefore the singing is huge, right? The vocalization is huge. The music is beautiful. The singers really just get to emote. Now, all you need are the 4 greatest singers in the world, and your audience is going to be satisfied. But my friends, we are novelists. We are writers. We can't rely on the 4 greatest singers in the world coming in and engaging our audience despite a plot that makes no sense. It is very true that when there is spectacle, right, when there is this visceral emotional engagement, the audience will be engaged, they will be almost engaged at the rubbernecking level. If you get my reference, I mean, people will pause to watch tragedy, car accidents. It's, displays of violence in the Roman Colosseum, the bullfights of Spain, like any kind of visceral life and death struggles or super high stakes encounters draw our attention. We're human. It's not a criticism. We're all the same. Nobody is like, oh, I'm indifferent to that. It has a way of engaging us. It's just the way our brains are wired, right? So when that exists, it will arouse the audience's attention. But the problem is that as fiction writers, the only spectacle we have, the only singers we have, if you will allow me to tease this out a little bit, are the ones that we manage to create in the brains of our reader, right? Think about that for a minute. We don't have the 4 greatest singers in the world. We have to use words to create that level of spectacle, of engagement, of drama, of performance, of stakes in the reader's mind. In other words, who's creating it? The reader's creating it. We're just using words to kind of hypnotize them in the direction of creating what we want them to create. So we have way more responsibility, right, for this question of the plot than the librettist of an opera might have, because they can say, the plot's the plot, but the arias will be fantastic, the set will be glorious, right? It's all up to us to create something that engages the reader. And because we're writers, we're just using words. We don't even have that kind of if you love music, you know what I mean by this. It's like a physical experience, to be in the presence of great music, especially live music in an opera house with an enormous orchestra, right? It gets in the body. We're feeling something like there's a parade marching by, right? We feel it, the way that it's that feeling of the drums beating as they go by. It's quite physical. It's quite tangible. We only have words, but we want our reader to have that experience. We want to put that feeling in their bodies. We want to make it as vivid as if we've got a parade and a bonfire and the 4 greatest singers in the world, entertaining them within the confines of their own mind. So reading is a very particular experience. It has an intimacy and a potential for subtlety and nuance, I think, that no other art form can match in quite the same way. But it does put a lot of responsibility on the writer. Now there's that Spider-Man saying, with great power comes great responsibility. But that works if you flip it as well, because with great responsibility also comes great power. We can make the words do anything we want. And therefore, we have such incredible influence over what's going on in the mind of our readers. How are we going to use our powers? Are we going to use them in the service of clarity? Are we going to get the reader's puzzle-solving mind, right, out of the way so that we can give them that fantastic experience of engagement? If we make our plot a puzzle that is so difficult to solve that they can never stop thinking about it, that they're always like, but wait a minute, wasn't he dead 2 scenes ago? And I don't actually understand what, like, if we make the reader work so hard, they never get to put down their critical faculties, the part of them that's really just trying to puzzle out what's going on. And until they can stop thinking, they really can't start feeling fully. And that's why we have the opposite problem, right? When the opera creators, they can make their audience feel just by having the orchestra start and the singer open their mouths. They're feeling. They don't think. It's so overwhelming. There's so much stimulation. But as writers, we're in the theater of the reader's brain. I hope that makes sense. And so if we force our reader to keep thinking and puzzling and thinking and puzzling and solving, they don't get the same opportunity to just immerse themselves in this fictional dream that's full of feeling and high stakes and just be engaged. And it's that quality that really good storytelling has, where the reader gets so swept into the fictional narrative that they tune out the outside world and miss their proverbial stop on the bus because they were lost in a book. That's the experience of really good fiction. If the reader is thinking and puzzling, of course, they're never going to miss their stop on the bus. They're on high alert. They're in a cerebral mode. They're using a different part of their brain. So you may have heard me quote Ernest Hemingway. It's a wonderful quote. It's so insightful, one of my favorite ones about writing. But Hemingway said, when we first start to work as writers, we get all the kick. We have all the fun, he means. We get all the kick and the reader gets none. But once we figure out a way of working, once we figure out what we're doing, the reader gets all the kick. And all we get, we writers, is a lot of hard work. So that's kind of what I'm talking about here. We are stepping up to the plate to do our job as writers, to write with great clarity, to figure stuff out, to really put a clear line of cause and effect on the page so that the reader doesn't have to, so that they can get the kick. So that is the message. That's the message and the purpose of me sharing my speed through of Il Trovatore, which I hope was at least entertaining. So now that message has been delivered, I'm going to say a quick hi. Hey, Paul, it's great to see you here. Byron, what a wonderful treat to have you here. You've got a nice crowd. So now that message has been delivered, what do we do? I'd like to give you some practical exploration about this. Well, the writer who is not on board the clarity bus yet, they're just not on board the simplicity and clarity bus yet. Here's what they may tend to do. And I'm going to reference the Rube Goldberg machine, which I imagine most of you know that reference, a very famous cartoonist who had a whole series of cartoons where an enormous and very complicated and quite funny machine would be built to do something really simple, like, boil an egg. But the machine would take up the entire room, and there would be 40 steps and, gears turning and canaries let loose and, levers going off. Maybe it was like a little Anvil Chorus there with things dinging and clicking all over the place. So the writer who does not foreground simplicity and clarity as part of their job has a tendency sometimes to build a kind of a Rube Goldberg machine style plot. In other words, instead of having the character do the next logical thing that the stated goal of the story would dictate, they try to insert as many steps as possible between A and B. So instead of, like, if they were dominoes and this was A and this was B, instead of A falling and making B happen, there's like A prime, A and a half, A.6. There's just a lot of cramming of needless stuff in between. And why does this happen? I like to think that I have insight into the impulses that writers have about this, because I've just seen so many of them do it. And I feel that the writer who does this is operating from a kind of a zero-sum vision of where creativity and creative ideas come from. And they are afraid of running out. They're afraid of getting to the end too soon. They don't want to let their hero act in a purposeful way, because they are afraid that they will not have enough invention. What's going to prevent them from getting to the end on page 10? If they just let their hero take a good whack at it, trying to do what the hero sets out to do, if they just let their hero go for it, they have a secret fear. I think it's usually unconscious one, but it might be conscious, that they'll just get to the end. And that's not the point, is it? The point is to write a book. The point is to come up with 60,000 words, 80,000 words. They just don't want to get to the end so soon. They don't know what they're supposed to be doing between now and word 80,000. And so they think that they need to just insert a lot of steps just to make things really full of steps. And so that's the Rube Goldberg machine plot, I think it's a fear of running out of ideas. And I would invite, again, any of you who are here live, if you've ever felt this in yourself, the fear of just being direct and clear in your storytelling, if it's ever made you say, oh, I better go on a tangent, I better add a subplot, I better come up with some kind of twist here. If you've ever done that, what was motivating you, what you thought you might be accomplishing by doing that, I would love to see it, so we can talk specifically about what's come up for you in your writing process. Now, here's the thing. You're not going to run out of ideas. What you need to replace that fear of running out of ideas with is a more accurate understanding of how a story is structured. Because a story is not structured by inserting 80,000 words worth of digressions between the beginning and They All Lived Happily Ever After. That's not how a story is structured. A story is structured because you have a protagonist who has some need for transformation and is going to go on a difficult mission of some kind that is going to afford them the opportunity to have that transformation, not all at once, but incrementally, step by step by step. How does change happen? It happens under pressure. How is pressure applied? Gradually, step by step. It's the same way we go to the gym and lift weights. We go the first day and we we can't even lift the weights. We have to do the exercise without weights. Then eventually we can do 2 pounds, then 4 pounds, and 6 pounds. Maybe after consistent practice, we'll be able to lift, something quite impressive. But the same weight that we can lift at the end of consistent training would have crushed us, would have overwhelmed us if we tried to pick it up on day one. And so we need to have that process of training and growth. We need to have the incremental increase of obstacles and pressure upon the hero in order to enable them to get to the end of the tale and be changed and achieve the mission that they set in the first place. So the tasks that your hero will undertake, the tests they will undergo, the choices that they will make, the decisions, the actions, the things they'll dare to do are all going to be the next logical step in this long progression of leveling up. You can't afford to digress, because if you do, your hero is not going to be able to continue their journey of transformation, which is, the stuff of a second act. And I've done talks that focus on second act. So if this interests you, look on the channel for some of the talks that I've done that we talk about the middle, how to structure the middle. But that's what's really supposed to be going on. So if you don't have a clear understanding of that, you may think that your hero is your hero, and there's a thing that they have to do at the end, and your job is to waylay them, to prevent them from getting there as long as possible until the book is long enough, and then you'll allow them to get there and it'll be the end. But that's not how to structure a tale. That's not how to do it. Every step that your hero takes is on the way to that mission. Everything that they try to do is the next logical thing that they think will get them closer to the mission. They are going step by step, but they have a goal. They're pointed in the direction. And so the complications that come up are not along the lines of like random obstacles, plot twists, delaying tactics, throw in another plot, skip ahead a generation, add random battle scenes, all these things. Go back to Il Trovatore, like, I don't know, have them keep mistaking each other for other people. I mean, these could be sort of fun things if they're part of a plot, but they're not useful if they're taking your hero away from their mission. The reader will get frustrated very quickly. Like, well, wait a minute. You said we were going to see the wizard. Dorothy, you said we were going to follow the yellow brick road and we're going to go see the wizard. And when we get to the wizard, you're going to ask him, send me back to Kansas. I was told you were the only one who could help me. That's it. Every step along the way is that. Follow the yellow brick road. Right? That's what Il Trovatore does not follow any kind of yellow brick road. I don't even know where the Emerald City is or who's the wizard or what. But it doesn't matter because you put the 4 greatest singers in the world up there and the audience is happy. We can't do that. We need to have our hero on some kind of path and let the reader in on it so that they don't have to spend all of their precious mental bandwidth saying, but wait a minute ago she wanted to go home to Kansas, but now she's opening up an ice cream parlor, with the Tin Man. But how is that going to get her to the wizard? Or is she not even doing the wizard thing anymore? Like, are we forgetting about that? So the experience of a person trying to parse the plot of Il Trovatore, you don't want that to happen. You don't want the readers getting continually disengaged by saying, but wait a minute ago we were doing this, but now there's this whole new thing. How does it all come together? Does it all come together? You don't want the reader doubting that you are in control of the situation. You want the reader to feel that they are in good hands, that if this writer adds anything to the plot, you better know that it's going to pay off in the end, that this is not set decoration, It's not just, oh, I better fill a couple of pages because I'm afraid I'm going to get to the end too fast. The very definition of clarity is that you can see what's there because there's not a lot of clutter lying on top of it. So clarity and simplicity, let's just talk about what those words might mean for you. So I think we've talked now about this sort of fear of the blank page, fear of running out of ideas, and maybe a lack of understanding of just what's supposed to fill that long space between the beginning and the end. We've got a great comment from me. Let me put this up, if you will indulge me, who shares keep wanting to keep the reader interested can be a well-intended motive, right, for putting in lots of stimulation, lots of bells and whistles, right? But it's not really the events that keep the audience entranced. It's not. Oh, this is so insightful. I'm so glad you posted this comment. Usually the story ends up with conflicting themes or plot holes. So this is a description, thank you so much, of a kind of a misguided effort by writers who think that if I just keep setting off flares, I'll keep the audience I'll keep my readers interested. But it's quite the opposite. It backfires. Just as she observed, it backfires. And you just end up with a plot that is full of holes and incomplete things, like dead ends, little cul-de-sacs that don't pay off or go anywhere. So what does keep the audience entranced, right? So let's talk about this. Oh, I did want to say this as well. I think one of the things also that keeps writers away from clarity and simplicity is that they mistakenly conflate it with the idea of dumbing down. That they think that a simple book is not impressive. That being too clear, the being perfectly clear somehow lacks sophistication. If that tickles you at all, if that feels a little bit like, oh, maybe I have a little bit of that in me, just examine it. Where did you get that idea? And is that so in the books you love most? Are the books you love most, complicated intellectual exercises that are, experiments in confusion and challenge the reader? I'm not saying that there aren't some books out there that are a certain type of reader will say, oh, I got through it. I got through that one. I read that one. It's almost like a mark of achievement, right? To get through a book that's so difficult that hardly anyone gets through it. I don't think that should be the goal we set for ourselves. That's my opinion. Yours may vary. So in order to achieve simplicity and clarity in your book, you need to be the boss of it. That's a phrase you've heard me use, being the boss of your book. But it's really important because what it means is that you are taking responsibility for knowing what your book is about, for deciding what your book is about and making it about that. You decide this is a story. She's trying to get home to Candace, and you invent it. You invent that mission. She's going to follow the Yellow Brick Road. She's going to get to the wizard, and she's going to ask him to send her home. Like, that's what the story is going to be about. And once you've made that decision, stick to it. Stick to it. Let it play out. Write it. Don't lose faith in it. Don't write half of a second act that's about that and then have Dorothy say, oh, but let's open a gelato shop instead, and the Tin Man can, entertain the children and attract business. We didn't sign up for a story about a gelato shop. I mean, I'm all in favor of gelato shops, but that's not what the story is about. Decide and stick to it. Now, in order to stick to it, you also have to be enough of a boss of your book to know what's not relevant. If you know what the story is about, then you know what the story's not about. Is about getting to Oz to speak to that wizard? Not about the gelato shop, even if you think it would be fun. Maybe someday you'll write a story about a gelato shop in Oz. Maybe someday you will. This isn't that day. Put it aside. That's not what we're here for, okay? So you take out what's not relevant. This is an important one. You must let the reader in on the stakes because you want the reader to care whether this mission gets accomplished or not. And what that means is that you reveal to the reader very early on that if Dorothy fails in her mission to convince the wizard to help her, she will never see her family again. She's never going to get home. It's the only way. He's the only one who can help her. Do you see how significant it is that the rules of the world are established in such a way that there is no other way for her to get home but to have this one person help her? If he says no, if he can't do it, she's going to be stuck in this weird Technicolor place forever, and she's never going to see her family again. And we already learned in the first act of that well-structured screenplay that she was willing to run home in a tornado in order to get back to Auntie Em, whom she had been told by a trickster, not telling the truth, that was ill. So the storyteller establishes how much her family means to her, takes her away from her family, puts her on a mission to get back to her family, and sets the stakes so clearly. This is the only person who can help you. Do you guys feel, even as I describe that, how clear that is? How clear and how simple. It is simple and clear. This kind of storytelling is more than enough to support a full-length novel. It's more than enough. But writers rarely trust it, or they have to be coaxed into trusting it. So I'm trying to coax you. I'm trying to coax you into trusting it today. So you let the reader in on the stakes, and then you line up the dominoes of cause and effect, and you do it in a way that makes sense. Your hero is going to be an active hero, and once you give them this mission, they are going to take action in pursuit of it. They are going to do stuff. They're going to, just as any of us would. Not like in Il Trovatore, where we'll be like, I'll join a nunnery, I'll drink poison. Like, it's not that the hero is going to do random dramatic things that are not going to help. The hero is going to do what they think is the next logical thing to do. Now, your hero may not be accurate. Your hero may make mistakes. They may be fooled. They may be tricked by other characters, by other archetypal characters, right? It doesn't mean that they will always make a great choice. People make, foolish or less than optimal choices all the time. But what you must do is you must allow your hero to function at the top of the capacity that you have established for that character at that moment in time. They should do what the reader would expect that character to do. It's a great way of delineating the incremental change in your hero over that second act full of pressures, tests, trials, and revelations, because the kinds of decisions they make in the beginning of the second act may not be nearly as good or as brave as the kind of decisions they'll be capable of making later. So even through their actions, just as in life, we know people through their actions. And so if you put your hero in action, if you make them an active, not a passive hero, so that they are driving the bus, as we say in Path of the Storyteller, your hero is driving the bus of every scene, then we get a double benefit. We get a plot that moves forward in a way that is pleasing to the reader because, oh, all right, she put on the red shoes. She's doing what she was told. She's going down the yellow brick road. Oh, along the way, she meets this new character and he says, she helps him because she's nice. And he says, what are you doing? She says, I'm off to see the wizard. And he says, I'll come with you. He doesn't say, oh, don't do that. Come with me. Let's open a tin can shop. No, the character that she meets on the way to the wizard says, good, I'll come with you. I could use a visit with that wizard too. Maybe he can help me too. And so now she's got a fellow traveler on that simple, clear mission. You must do the same. You must put your hero in motion toward whatever it is that they say they need to do, or whatever task they've accepted, whatever mission has been given to them and accepted. and they've got to do the next logical thing that they are capable of. They can't all of a sudden have superpowers, and they can't just say, I don't know what to do. I'll just wait here for a secondary character to come along and move the plot forward. No, 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 no. That's not an active hero. That's a passive hero. So you're going to line up the dominoes of cause and effect because your hero is going to be active. They're going to be doing stuff, and the stuff that they do will have consequences, just as in life. They're going to do things, and there will be an outcome of whatever it is that they do. And that outcome then becomes part of the realm of the story. It becomes part of the world. It becomes part of the character's history. The characters that they meet are now part of the cast of characters. So they become part of the accruing consequences. They are causes of all of the effects that are to come. All right. Now, I've been mentioning other characters and your hero going through tests and obstacles and trials and revelations and stuff. So just remember that they are the exact training, if you will, that your hero needs to be ready when they get to the promised place at the end of the second act. So if my goal is, a real life goal, let's say, that takes a long time, that has a kind of an incremental improvement. Let's say my goal is to run a marathon, but right now I can't even jog. I can walk, fine, but I don't, if I break into a run, I have to stop. So I have to do that incrementally in a place that's at a rate that is plausible. And if I say, today I don't feel like running, but I do feel like practicing my Italian, so that's what I'm going to do. That may be fine, but it doesn't get me any closer to my marathon goal. So it's still me doing, performing a task, leveling up, doing this stuff, but it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant to the goal of being able to run the marathon. Too many writers, because they don't have a clear mission for their hero, and because they don't activate their hero consistently, so that scene after scene after scene, the hero is doing something that the hero thinks is bringing them step by step closer to this mission. Because they don't do that, they feel like, I don't know what happens next. I know, I'll have her do Italian for a little while. That'll give it some variety. That'll break up the monotony of just showing her training for the marathon. It's like, well, you need to find the ways to break up the monotony that don't feel like you abandon the plot. You need to find the ways to level up so that the hero is on the same mission, but it does not feel like you're retreading the same material again and again. You will find that variety in all kinds of ways. All that matters is that it's all coming at your hero in order to give the hero what they need to develop in order to be ready. Don't improve your hero's Italian if what you really need to do is have them be able to run, a long distance. Think of it that way and see if that helps you at all. You sort of trust your capacity to invent. You're inventing along a yellow brick road. You're inventing along a pretty clear trajectory. So all of the complications that are going to come are going to be not just because they're obstacles to the hero, but they're obstacles to this hero on this mission. So that's the takeaway there. All right, let me just quickly recap because I'm going to sum up in a minute and I'm going to check for questions. So in order to really embrace the practice of clarity and simplicity in your storytelling, you have to be the boss of your book. You have to make a decision about what the story is about, and you have to stick to it. You have to have the discipline in revision, perhaps, not necessarily in drafting, but you have to have the discipline to leave out what's not relevant to this particular story. You have to let the reader in on the stakes for your hero so that they care. At a We may have had a glitch in the internet. I'm not sure if that went out for a second, but let me just repeat what I said just in case. So you have to have the discipline to leave out what's not relevant to this particular story. You have to let the reader in on the stake so they know why it matters so much that the hero accomplished this mission. And you line up the dominoes of cause and effect in a way that shows your hero acting with intention that is logical according to their best judgment, their best capacity at that moment of the story. All right. So that's what we've got for you guys. That the obstacles that you'll use have to be pertinent to the mission as well. They have to be relevant to this hero. We call it the bespoke suit of adventure, right? A custom tailored suit of adventure that's designed for this hero on this mission, on this journey of transformation. So that's some of my little action tips for today. And I just want to say, when you stop relying on needing the 4 greatest singers in the world to sing your book in order for it to work, you're doing your reader a tremendous favor, because they don't want to jump to the task of having to be the 4 greatest singers of the world in order to enjoy your book. They want you to do the work. They want you to make the choices about what's important, what's the story about, what's not relevant. Get it out of their view, right? Don't clutter the page with it. They want you to do the work so they can just, enjoy the music, if you will. And I hope that is helpful to you all, and that the idea of being clear in your storytelling, not being afraid to be that simple, is one that you will find a virtue and not be suspicious of. Okay, so that's what I've got for you today. I'm going to just do a quick survey of the comments. I thank you all so much for being here today, for sticking with me through this talk about what to do if your plot is bananas, why it's not rewarding to the reader, what to do instead. As ever, I'm so grateful for those of you who come live. It's always a treat to see you here. If you're watching the replay, though, it's a treat to see you here too. I hope you'll subscribe to the channel. And if you enjoyed this and found benefit in it, give it a little thumbs up on YouTube, because it does help spread the news about this live stream every Wednesday. I really enjoy spreading this mentorship energy around like cream trees. I really want to help as many writers as I can not feel that they have to reinvent the wheel of how to write a decent story, how to craft a plot, how to write a book that really works. It's what we're all here to do. And the sooner we can start to feel like what we're doing works, it helps us stay motivated. It helps us stay with our writing practice. And that's ultimately what we really want to do. We don't want to give up on our creative selves. It's part of us. It's part of us. And we have to honor that. So I hope to see you all next week. As ever, if you've got something you want to hear me talk about in a future live stream, let me know. I love to get your suggestions. Although I have to say, going to the opera this weekend was a totally unexpected source of inspiration, and I hope it was fun for you as well. Until the next time I see you, keep writing. Take care.